Let's look at autism spectrum disorder and emotional regulation. It's about your nervous system being overloaded, and there are tools to support it. So, here's a message that autistic people rarely hear. If you're autistic or you love someone who is, you've probably heard a lifetime of messages like, you're too sensitive, you overreact, you need to calm down, you can't take things so literally, or you're being dramatic, you're fine 1 minute and melting down the next, you need to toughen up. And let me tell you the truth, clinically, neurologically, and humanly. Autism brains are not disordered. They're wired for precision, depth, honesty, and intensity. And they feel the world way more vividly than most people realize. So, what looks like maybe behavioral problems or meltdowns or shutdowns is actually a nervous system that is totally overloaded, overstimulated, and under. So, today we're going to finally explain why that sensory overload happens, why emotional responses can feel so intense, why transitions are hard, why masking is exhausting, why shutdowns happen, and why burnout feels like collapse, and why the world can feel too loud or too fast, and how TMS can ease emotional regulation and sensory overwhelm. So, let's start with the real neuroscience. The autistic brain is not less, it's not more, it's just different. Autistic brains process the world very differently, not incorrectly. They tend to have increased sensory intake. More data comes in sound, light, texture, emotion, tone, detail. They also have deeper pattern processing. So they notice things other people miss. They have stronger logical networks. So you see clarity where others see vagueness or ambiguity. They have higher emotional honesty, so you feel deeply and express authentically. And they have reduced social prediction circuits. This means the brain may struggle to forecast what others will say or do. And that's not because you're fragile, it's because the world is stimulating. And nothing about this is a flaw, but it requires the right support. And because the world is not designed for autistic nervous systems. So, why is emotional regulation harder for people on the spectrum? Emotional regulation isn't a personality trait. It's a neurologic function involving the amygdala, which controls our emotion, the prefrontal cortex, which controls regulation, and sensory processing networks, and the autonomic nervous system. In autistic people, all of these operate differently. Emotions rise faster because the amygdala activates quickly. Emotions hit harder because sensory input and emotional input process vividly and intensely. And regulation is slower because the prefrontal cortex has to work harder to catch up. Shutdown is what happens when all of these resources run out, not from disinterest, but from exhaustion. Meltdowns are neurologic events. They're not choices or attitude or misbehavior. And this is not a failure. This is just a different operating system with different requirements. So, with sensory overload, life just feels too loud. Sensory overload happens when lights are too bright, sounds stack on top of each other, textures feel sharp or irritating, smells hit too hard, multiple people talk at once, environments are unpredictable. And here's the actual neuroscience. The sensory cortex is more active, so more input arrives all at once. The filtering becomes harder. So, neurotypical brains filter background noise automatically. Autistic brains process much more of it. And then the nervous system often hits its limit very quickly. And when that happens, the reaction is not traumatic, it's actually a protective reaction. Overload is your brain saying, I can't take in more, I need relief. Let's look at masking and the exhaustion that no one sees. Masking is the act of copying expressions, monitoring your tone, rehearsing conversations, suppressing stimming, hiding discomfort, forcing eye contact, and pretending you're not overwhelmed. Masking is not harmless. Masking is huge emotional labor. It drains emotional energy, cognitive bandwidth, and social stamina and self trust. Masking for too long leads to autistic burnout, shutdown, depression, anxiety, identity confusion. And masking doesn't mean you're functioning well. It means you're working so hard, you're working overtime to appear acceptable. So let's also look at meltdowns and shutdowns. What's really happening there? Meltdowns are nervous system overload events. They're not tantrums, they're not defiance, and they're not lack of discipline. Physically, they resemble the amygdala flooding, sensory overload, autonomic activation, loss of regulatory capacity, and neural overwhelm. This is the body releasing what it can't contain. Shutdowns are really the opposite response. It's like flipping a breaker switch. The brain says, I can't process anything else, I'm powering down. And this looks like going silent, withdrawing, freezing, dissociating, going numb, losing speech temporarily. Shutdown is protection, it's not avoidance. Autistic burnout. This is the collapse after prolonged masking and overwhelm. Autistic burnout is not depression, though it can look very similar. Burnout is a full system depletion of emotional, sensory, cognitive, and physical resources. And symptoms can include extreme fatigue, difficulty speaking, ability to socialize, heightened anxiety, reduced tolerance to sensory input, difficulty initiating tasks, increased pain, sleep disturbances, or feeling flat or gone. And burnout happens when the demand of the world exceeds the capacity of your nervous system for way too long. And it's not weakness, this is survival mode. So, how does TMS support autistic nervous systems? TMS is not a cure for autism, nor should it be considered that. Autism is not something to cure, but TMS can help stabilize the systems that create that overwhelm. What it does is reduces amygdala hyperactivity. So that leads to fewer emotional spikes, less panic, and less overwhelm. The other thing it does is strengthen prefrontal regulation, and that allows for smoother transitions, better emotional control, and improved executive function. It also improves sensory processing tolerance, so that increases your bandwidth in stimulating environments. It enhances autonomic balance, so you get fewer shutdowns, more resilience, less fight or flight activation. And it supports mood stability. So anxiety and depression are common comorbidities, but both can improve with TMS. It also builds your regulation capacity, making it easier to cope with change, transitions, communication, school or work stress, and the daily unpredictability of life. Patients and parents often report my child isn't melting down as easily, transitions are smoother, they're more patient, they're not shutting down, they're more regulated, and I can finally breathe again. And this goes for both the parents and the autistic child. And this isn't about changing who someone is at their core. It's about reducing the suffering that comes from that overload. So, this is what healing really looks like, not masking, but true regulation. Healing is not acting more neurotypical or suppressing your traits or performing socially or hiding overwhelm. Healing is smoother emotional transitions, fewer sensory triggered meltdowns, reduced shutdown frequency, better tolerance to daily stimuli, better communication, more energy, more joy, and more comfort in your own body, more authenticity, less exhaustion, and way more capacity. So, healing is not changing the identity. Healing is relieving the suffering. And here's the most important message for autistic people and parents. If you're autistic or someone you love, if you felt misunderstood, misjudged, or mislabeled, please hear this. Your brain is not wrong, and your reactions are not wrong, and your needs are certainly not wrong, and your intensity is not wrong. Your sensitivity is not wrong. You are not too much, but the world can be too loud, and there are ways to quiet that noise. So, if this felt like someone finally understood you, if you're tired of overwhelm, shutdowns, burnout, or sensory flooding, if you're a parent who wants your child to feel more regulated, confident, or safe, we can help support those neural circuits that support you, not to change who you are, but to reduce the suffering that you never deserved. If you're ready, the next step is simple. Start a conversation with us, tell me your story, and let's help your nervous system breathe again. Let's build comfort, calm, and regulation on your terms. Your brain is not the problem. Your nervous system just needs support, and we are here for that.